Imagine for a moment how your life would have looked if you existed outside your current sphere, particularly in ancient Egypt. Pharaohs, pyramids, mummies, these are just a few things that come to mind when someone mentions ancient Egypt. However, have you ever thought how life used to be for the people living there? In this fascinating video, I will take you on a journey to explore the everyday life of an ancient Egyptian through the eyes of an amateur historian. From food to religion, you will get a detailed look at everything that has happened in ancient Egypt during its peak period. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Family life. The ancient Egyptians highly valued family life, and it began at an early age. Both men and women married young, and the majority of marriages were polygamous, with the husband having numerous wives. The husband often had a senior or chief wife, who was seen as a superior to the others. Divorce existed in ancient Egypt, although it was uncommon due to the Egyptians' devotion to the sanctity of the family unit. Children. Children were a vital element of the family unit as well. They were seen as a divine favor, especially in noble and royal households. Paintings of queens and kings, for example, depict loving and tight relationships between the parents and their offspring. Working life. Life as a peasant in ancient Egypt was not always enjoyable. The majority of peasants made a living off the land through agriculture. Grain, particularly wheat, was a life-sustaining crop in ancient Egypt. Because there were limited grazing grounds and meat was expensive, most peasants subsisted on ground wheat dishes, supplemented with limited vegetables. The Egyptians were among the first to employ an ox-drawn plow, but the job of plowing, planting, and harvesting would have been extremely tough. Crop taxes were also enforced, making it impossible for most peasant households to move beyond their limited means. A long-held belief claims that the magnificent pyramids of ancient Egypt were built with slave labor. Yet, this hypothesis has been subject to much speculation. Many historians believe that slaves in ancient Egypt were more of a servant than a slave. Others believe that individuals who were less affluent in ancient Egyptian culture were compelled to labor in humiliating and unpleasant jobs. Role of women and men. Women were not considered second-class citizens in ancient Egypt, contrary to common assumptions. In fact, they were frequently viewed as men's equals. They were permitted to possess property, testify in court, and even conduct commercial transactions, just like men. A woman ruled Egypt as pharaoh on several occasions. Despite the fact that women were valued better than women in other areas of the world at the time, they were still seen as the major caregivers of the house and children. Their major tasks remained to monitor domestic activities, such as raising kids and meal preparation for the household. Men, on the other hand, labored in fields to support their families and provide crops for them to eat. Women were considered equal to males in many ways, but the man was still seen as the head of the family, and women were expected to follow their fathers and husbands. The role of male slaves in Egypt was much more like that of a servant than slaves. Some men became craftsmen by learning a trade from their fathers or artisans. Food in ancient Egypt. Apart from the River Nile, Egyptians had no way to irrigate their crops in the past. They mostly cultivated wheat and barley. Egyptians used wheat to make bread and porridge and ate meat as well, and butcher shops existed just as they do now. They ate the meat in the courtyard at home. Egyptians avoided eating pork because they believed pigs brought dangerous illnesses. They dined on meat, mutton, and goose. In ancient Egypt, beer was probably the most favorite drink, and it was made from barley, just like it is today. Although wine existed in ancient Egypt, it was mostly found at the banquets of affluent noblemen. The bread was seasoned and flavored with honey, fruit, sesame seeds, and herbs, since it was the most popular and significant food in ancient Egypt. Religion. The gods and goddesses of Egyptian mythology were worshipped by the ancient Egyptians. Their religion was polytheistic, although cities and villages would frequently claim a certain god as one of their most revered. Many temples were created in honor of various gods and goddesses, and the religion was packed with rituals, rites, and other distinctive activities and ceremonies. Culture. The ancient Egyptian civilization was full of entertainment. Egyptians engaged in activities ranging from fishing to riverboating on the Nile. According to the paintings and sketches discovered, they're shown hunting crocodiles and hippopotamuses, swimming and enjoying boat games. Other sports included athletics and early versions of team sports like rowing and hockey. The wealthy Egyptians were entertained by having lavish parties filled with enormous amounts of food and drink, just as we do when we throw parties. Music was also an essential aspect of ancient Egyptian society, as were festivals. Before proceeding, be sure to leave a like for the algorithm and subscribe to our channel clicking the bell. This will encourage us to do better and you'll never miss any of our weekly videos. The ancient Egyptian pharaohs. Pharaohs were the god kings of ancient Egypt who ruled between 3150 BC and 30 BC when Rome conquered Egypt. The political and religious leader of the Egyptian people were pharaohs. They owned the land, made laws, collected taxes, and defended Egypt against foreigners. Pharaohs were the gods on earth. A new kingdom began in the history of this interesting nation every time a new dynasty assumed possession of the throne. While monarchs frequently intermarried with daughters, grandchildren, sisters, and brothers in order to retain the monarchy within the family, the kingdom nonetheless changed hands numerous times, resulting in a vibrant and complicated pharaonic history. Pharaohs had absolute power over their subjects and directed the army and made laws. Below the pharaohs were commanding priests and nobles. Only nobles could occupy government offices, and they benefited from tributes given to the pharaohs. Priests were in charge of delighting the gods. Scribes handled government documents alongside the aristocrats. They were intelligent and could write. Soldiers fought in wars or commanded domestic insurgencies. During extended periods of quiet, warriors also oversaw the construction of pyramids and palaces by peasants, farmers, and slaves. The middle class was made up of experienced employees such as doctors and craftspeople. They created and marketed jewelry, pottery, papyrus, utensils, and other useful items. Naturally, some people had to purchase products from artisans and tradesmen. These were the shopkeepers and merchants who sold these items to the general public. The bottom of the social hierarchy was occupied by farmers and slaves and servants. Farmers tended the fields and worked in the stone quarries and built pyramids. They paid taxes in the form of grain. Slaves came from wars and were forced to work. Symbols of the pharaoh. The pharaoh of ancient Egypt used to show their kingship by wearing a crown or headdress with the uraeus, cobra, over the forehead. They also wear a fake beard and had a bull's tail protruding from their waist to demonstrate personal might. White crown. Upper Egypt's crown represented dominance over the region. The pharaoh utilized it solely on events involving Upper Egypt. It has the appearance of a tall, white mitre or a white bowling pin, deprived of a bottom. Red crown. Lower Egypt's crown, which represented dominance over the region. Pharaoh wore it solely on events involving Lower Egypt. This crown featured a circular bottom with a tall, thin section jutting out at the back and a long curl linked at its base. Double crown. Upper and Lower Egypt's unified crown, symbolizing the pharaoh's dominion over both. The red and white crowns were merged in one crown by means of the white crown inside the red crown. Blue crown. A blue fabric of leather headgear embellished with bronze or gold discs. Pharaoh used it in combat and at certain rituals. Atef crown. A crown of white color designed with ostrich feathers and a tiny sun disk on top. Pharaoh wore it during religious rituals. Nemes headdress. A blue and gold striped headcloth falling down both sides of the head. the front of each shoulder and the back. This headdress is part of Pharaoh's death mask and sarcophagi, coffins, and King Tut wears it in his death mask. Crook. A blue and gold striped staff attached to a hook on one end. The flail is crossed over the breast of the pharaoh in sculptures and on sarcophagi. Flail. Farmers utilized a manual threshing apparatus with a long handle and a free swinging stick to beat wheat. Cartouche. A loop of rope with a knot on one end that carried hieroglyphic writings of some of the pharaoh's names. It represented that which the sun encircles, implying that the pharaoh reigned over whatever the sun surrounded. Serek. A written sign for kingship resembling a palace and containing one of the pharaoh's names. Life of the Pharaoh. As a young kid in the life of the pharaoh, the crown prince began preparing to become the pharaoh through a series of courses. Because the pharaoh frequently battled at the head of his army, many of these lectures emphasized physical strength. Princes visited the royal stables to learn how to ride and break untamed horses. They also went on hunting and fishing excursions and competed in lengthy foot races to increase stamina. The throne was normally passed down from father to son, although there were exceptions. If there was no son to inherit, a sibling would become the new pharaoh when the previous monarch died. If the lone heir was a woman, her husband might ascend to the throne. After the death of the previous monarch, a prominent official might become pharaoh. According to certain accounts, several crown princes who outlived their fathers did not become pharaohs, although the reason for this is unknown. Coronation. The coronation was a series of festivities and celebrations that lasted up to a year. As a result, the coronation year was not included in the number of years an emperor reigned. After the coronation, the first year of a reign began. The burial of a new pharaoh was always accompanied by the new pharaoh, and on the first day of a new season, the coronation of a new pharaoh. List of coronation ceremonies and festivals. Unification of Upper and Lower Egypt was a ceremony that was symbolic reunification of the two lands of Egypt. The appearance of the king was a ritual conducted immediately after inheriting the throne and repeated every 2 years after that. It consisted of 3 steps. Pharaoh appeared as king of Upper Egypt, wearing the white crown. As king of Lower Egypt, Pharaoh appeared wearing the red crown. Pharaoh appeared as king of Upper and Lower Egypt, wearing the double crown. Said festival was meant to restore the pharaoh's vital life force. It was initially held during the coronation and was repeated by the pharaoh in the 30th year of his or her rule. After that, the pharaoh held it every 3 years, while some performed it more frequently. Sukkah festival was a festival in which a holy boat is built and pulled by the pharaoh to the Nile or a sacred lake. This event is held every 6 years after its commemoration during the coronation year. Sukkah was an underworld god who guarded royal tombs. Burial of Pharaoh. Mummification and burial were major aspects of Egyptian life. The Egyptians thought that preserving the body ensured the soul's survival in the afterlife. Soon after attaining the throne, the pharaoh began constructing his or her tomb. The types and locations of tombs created changed with time, as did the site of the country's capital. Tombs were decorated with scenes from the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. The earliest pharaonic tombs are the mastaba tombs made of mud brick. Scholars found these tombs in some of the oldest cemeteries near the ancient capital. Mastabas were on the Nile's west bank, which was the realm of the dead. Pyramids were elaborations of the mastaba design made of stone. The first was the step pyramid of Djoser, which Imhotep designed. Architects planned the pyramids and included a mortuary temple and other royal tombs in the complex. The Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza is the greatest example of this type of tomb. Later, pharaohs saw that grave thieves broke into the previous tombs, so they built concealed rock-cut graves. The Valley of the Kings is the name given to the location where these tombs were erected. Some tombs have many rooms and more than one king. Pharaohs received elaborate burials containing a wide variety of goods. At first, priests buried pharaohs with items like clothes, furniture, games, and jewelry. During the 19th dynasty, priests began burying them with items made for the afterlife. An example of this is the clay Shabti figurines made to serve the pharaohs. Priests placed food, oil, and dishes in the tombs to nourish the king in the afterlife. Life in ancient Egypt was not easy. The people had to work from dawn till dusk. While some enjoyed the lifestyle, others wished they could have a break from being slaves of time. What do you think about it now?